Well, good day, Gilbert. It's good to see you again, and it'll be fun doing this interview with you. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here in California, and I think 3 in the afternoon, West Africa time in Lagos, where you
Right.
are. So, Drew, thankfully, with the wonders of technology, we can be talking to each other like we're right in the next room, even though we got
Beautiful.
a whole continent and an ocean between us.
That's
And
right.
so, it'll be a pleasure for me to have this interview with you about your recent teaching missionary journey into the heart of Africa. Just by way of introduction, my name is Alan Jacks. I'm a uh, had a full career in engineering and aerospace, mechanical engineering, working for big computer companies and aerospace companies. And I've recently retired from that. I don't know how long I'll stay not working because I really enjoy engineering, but I really enjoy the teaching ministry and the foreign
Yeah.
missions work and meeting
Yeah.
wonderful people like you and people in Africa. It's been awesome, and I wouldn't be able to do that if I was tied to a desk job. So I don't know. The longer it gets, the less likely I think I'm going to go back into the corporate world.
I hear you.
Um, I believe we first became acquainted with each other at the North American Teachers Conference
That's
in
right.
California, hosted by Greg Moretzky and that I think Antelope Valley Church back in the summer, right?
That's
Summer of
right.
2024. Wow.
24. Yeah.
And I reached out to, well, that was actually Dr. Jacoby who had something on his website saying that they had a need for some support, financial support for Nigeria. There was a need to support some like six Christians or something. And I had it in my heart to visit Africa for the first time. I counted over 25 countries traveling for engineering and never once been to Africa. So I thought, that's just something I really want to do.
Mm.
And so I asked Dr. Jacoby about that. He said, well, there's some Christians in Nigeria that are aspiring teachers that love your help. So I just supported all of them. And then I said, who could I get in touch with? I'm here at the teachers conference. He said, well, Gilbert Kamang is definitely your man. He's the guy to reach out to. So we tried to connect, and I think I might have said good morning to you in the elevator.
That's
And
right.
it's just kind of crazy. I coming down all sleepy, and we're looking for our coffee, and I see this person in the elevator. Good morning. How are you? Good. And then Jacoby says, "Well, Gilbert's there at the conference. Try to reach out to him." And I was like, "Wait a second. Was he the guy in the elevator?" And then so we connected over phone, over WhatsApp, and
Yeah.
it only took me about 15 minutes of listening to you to realize that you're a person that I wanted to support both financially and spiritually. And we got a monthly check coming in the mail,
Thank
so to
you.
speak. But that's not
Thank
the main
you.
part. The main part is that I just really want to partner with dedicated, thoughtful, resourceful, active Christians who are willing to roll up their sleeves, take personal risks, just like in the missionary journeys in the Bible, and make a direct impact. And I felt like, um, in remote places, that there would really not be a way to get there unless there's someone on the ground with connections, uh, speak the languages and have that authentic presence. So I thought, man, I can't find a better opportunity than this. So I said, hey, you got my support right here. And so we've just, I think, built our friendship based on that. Isn't it kind of how you remember it as well?
I mean, it was amazing. I felt exactly the same way. I heard you speak about relationships. That got me, our first call, you were talking about relationships, and I thought, wow, you know, and so everything you just described, I felt exactly that way. I was amazed, even your decision right away, right there. I think you were supporting somebody who passed on or something, and
Yeah.
you were like, "Look, that amount, I can support your work." It was like instant connection, but it felt even more so when we met in person a few months after that. It felt even more so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great. And, I've been I felt very welcomed and very honored and, and very respected when I came to Africa. And you went out of your way. You met us at the hotel. You drove us all around, and that's no small thing in Lagos to drive around from here to there. That's not as simple as in Western countries. But
No.
I really felt like it's one of these things, these partnerships where I really felt like uh, I'm a pretty self-sufficient guy. I mean, I set my own table, so to speak, but I felt like, you know, this would probably be about 1,000 times harder if it wasn't for Gilbert. And I thought, I guess at my age, I'm approaching middle age now, in case you can't tell from the hair, but I thought, I don't even know if I could do this. I mean, so you were that empowering for me to really do my own journey, and it sparked a ton of stuff down in the in the countryside down around Owerri in the southeast block. And
That's
I mean, I
right.
just have a tremendous vision for some great things. I'm working with Mr. Kemi down there. But anyway, let's just focus. I just really am excited to hear about your trip. We we were in communication on WhatsApp quite a bit.
Yeah.
Your trip, and I appreciate you, kind of having me come in through the back door, so to speak, while you were really engaged and busy with boots on the ground down there. But I'm interested to hear, I guess, more of your spiritual perspective and how
Mm,
you listened, listen to the people, how you connect with people, put your ear to the ground, so to speak,
mm,
and just make those connections and really be
mm,
able to see
mm,
into people. Because I think it, it's not extraordinary to go to a place with an agenda, with some teaching tools and resources that, any smart person can put together and just teach about some subject. I mean, that's great. That's a great resource, but, we have books for that. And,
agree.
but people, especially I think insightful spiritual people have a way to look into people's hearts, and to
Mm,
really see them. And
mm,
that's to me is what distinguishes Jesus
mm,
over anybody. I believe the
mm.
apostle Paul was able to do that. When he went to
Yeah.
Athens, he said, by the way, I was looking around and I noticed
Mm,
among you, and
yeah.
that was the key. I
Yeah.
noticed. And yet Jesus was the master at noticing
Yeah.
the details, right? He'd say,
Right.
you have a saying, but I tell you, so he was able to tie in their local customs, their local culture, their local
Mm,
mindset, and to
yeah.
make this word of God jump out at them with realism and
That's
immediacy.
right.
And that's what I was impressed. You and I do a lot of the same things when we go to a foreign country. We just get out and walk. I don't get in a car. I just walk around and try to perceive what is this new world that I'm in, and
That's
how do
it.
I fit into this world. I
That's
don't
it.
come in looking for things that I'm familiar with, that I want to see, restaurants or whatever, people that I know. I was like, I want to see this new place. And I got the sense
Yeah.
that you do the same thing. So that's really pretty cool. I look forward to hearing about that. So I guess just to begin, with your good pleasure, I'd just like to ask a few questions and about the
Please
trip. And
do.
you went to churches, right? I think,
Yes.
people listening will appreciate you taking us all along this journey. So, maybe to begin, how many trips were on this recent excursion? What were the churches? What were the cities? And how long did you stay in each one?
Yeah. So this time around, it was Ethiopia. The capital of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa, which is situated in East Africa, Eastern Africa. And then, interestingly, as I was preparing the trip to Ethiopia, I was on the phone with a friend who oversees the work in Central Africa. He's based in Kinshasa. And all of a sudden, while we're talking about something different, some courses I started teaching a few days ago on Sunday, we're talking about that. And then all of a sudden, I remembered that I'd been planning to take advantage of any time I'm in East Africa to continue to the DRC because Lubumbashi is a city in the DRC that happens to be very close to Zambia. So it's actually closer to Southern and Eastern Africa than Central Africa. It's almost 2 hours flight away from the capital city, Kinshasa. It's
Mhm.
a 1 hour time zone difference between Kinshasa in the same country and Lubumbashi. So I just remember, and so I decided to give it a try. So at the end of the day, those were my two destinations: Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, Lubumbashi in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I did stay a week each, exactly 1 week in Ethiopia. Arrived on a Monday and stayed till the following Monday, and then left. So I arrived on the 10th of March, stayed till the 17th, and on the 17th I boarded the same Ethiopian airlines that took me from here in Nigeria to Ethiopia and continued to Lubumbashi. So those were my two destinations on this trip. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting to hear you say that. Of course, for me, they're just names that I hear in the news and see on the map, and you were there. But speaking of the news, both of these areas have been in the news. The
Oh, pretty much.
worldwide news.
Pretty
So
much.
maybe you could tell me a little bit. The first one, doesn't it mean desert flower or something like that? Tell me a little bit about each one of those areas and why and and what's happening. I guess on the what are the current events there that are
Yeah, yeah.
most significant?
They've pretty been in the news, so you're correct. In fact, a bit of background to my trip to Addis Ababa. I've been wanting to go there for the past 5 years minimum. Um, my first connection with Addis Ababa was a brother I met in Ghana in 2018. My wife and I were invited as guest speakers for a conference that was for singles across our
Mhm.
churches. And this brother and I, we sat next to each other in a bus driving from Accra to a place outside Accra in Ghana, where the retreat was taking place. And so we connected, in just sitting in the bus for like an hour and a half drive or something. We connected in a deep way, and I just started dreaming of visiting the church. And so lots of my trips, I've been to over 40 churches in 24 countries in Africa. Almost every single one of them, I work along relational lines. It's very relational. So my dream of going there started in 2018 when I sat next to Eliab in a bus heading to a retreat in Ghana, Accra. And I attempted in 2020 to go. Of course, we all know what happened in 2020. I couldn't make it. But I ended up doing a teaching session for the church there online in 2020. Attempted to go visit in 2021. But what stopped me this time was there was a Tigray crisis going on. So you
Mhm.
have this three big ethnic groups in Ethiopia. The Tigray is one, the Omoro is the other one, and then the Amara. So the language called Amharic, which is almost like a national language, is from the Amara tribe. You have the Omoro, the current leadership is from the Omoro tribe, and then the Tigray. So there was a huge war where lots of people died. And so at that time in 2021, in fact, they were advancing towards the capital city, Addis Ababa. They were very close. They were some kilometers away from entering into the capital city. So I just couldn't make that trip. On that trip, I went to Kampala, Uganda, spent some days with the church, continued to Bujumbura, that's in Burundi, and my last stop was going to be Addis Ababa. I couldn't do it. So this is 2021. I tried again. It didn't work. Now I was on the phone with a brother for a trip I made. I paid a visit to the church in Kenya in January this year, and it was a trip that required some pre-work, making some calls ahead of that trip. And so one of the brothers I called to talk to happened to be in Addis Ababa at the time I called him. And he said he's with the church in Addis Ababa. As we talked, he said, Gilbert, it would be great for you to come encourage the church in Addis Ababa. So that's how Addis Ababa came into the radar kind of again. And so that's the long background to how this trip built up. And I'm using that to say the Tigray crisis stopped me from making it. So it's a beautiful country, incredible culture. Just like you talked about our love for interacting with the culture. When I walked across Addis Ababa for like an hour and a half with a brother who was guiding me, the way I felt, I don't think I'd ever felt that way in any city. It was a very unique feel in terms of the culture, the people. There's just something really unique. One of the background stories about Ethiopia is that they are just the only African country I know that didn't get colonized. The
I was going to
Italians
ask
came
you about
really
that.
close to colonizing them, but they had a serious battle where they knocked the Italians out. And there's something about that spirit that I felt walking across the city of Addis Ababa. There's something about them. There's something about, I don't know how to put it, but like they don't have a broken spirit, if I can put it that way. And so I think that transpired as I walked around and interacted with people. I had some great conversations with people. Tea and coffee is a big thing, especially coffee. It appears coffee was first uh, uh, coffee. The drinking coffee started in Ethiopia for the first time, and so they have a whole incredible tradition around coffee. Um, I had the opportunity to experience a cultural evening that the disciples invited me for, where I got to experience the different cultures through dance, there was some mix with Middle Eastern culture. I felt some of that mix, but it was just a beautiful place to be. So beauty on one side, then the other side, some huge ethnic divides that tend to be determined by who is in power and from which tribe is he from? Who is the president? And is he Tigray? Is it Amara? Is it Omoro? So that kind of dictates a lot of the political landscape of the country. I'll stop
Mm.
there for now. There's so much to say.
Wow, that's a great description, and I guess I am fascinated too by the fact that they were the only country that was not colonized, and I've done some study of that early colonization, and to me it's utterly shameful how the European powers, at the Council of Berlin in like 1895 or whatever, just got together and decided how they wanted to carve up Africa for their own purposes. And then the so-called scramble for Africa was on, and everybody went out uh, and to go into a country with the express intent of exploiting it is it's a sad chapter, I think, in world history. But as you say, you got this feeling, this sense, and it's just my exposure to other countries, and so in Europe and different places. That's that. There's kind of something imprinted on the DNA of people that make them. Maybe it seems like it's a more peaceful agrarian country. There's a lot of folk music. There's a lot of family, and then there's some that are just more industrious, almost militaristic in their attitudes. Very hardworking, very punctual, very assertive, which could tend toward being aggressive, and so it's just interesting to see different countries that have have different different aspects to them, and certainly wars do a tremendous that they shape the people in a lot of ways. I mean, you could have, especially countries that have lost wars, I think, or lost a lot of people and resources. It's tragic. It does tend to, I think, break the confidence and the assertiveness and the authenticity. What am I trying to say here?
Authenticity, right?
Authenticity. Thank you. Of a country, and I saw. I don't know. I'm not an expert at this, but it's interesting, and it makes me want to go visit that country to hear you talk about it. So, what was, maybe just by way of a little background, what was what were the circumstances of this particular visits? Did the church leaders reach out to you? Did they kind of tell you what their needs were? Or was it just a matter of talking and you both together kind of formulated, well, your plan? How did it come out? Because, you weren't just there on a personal visit. You were there on church business.
That's
And,
right.
you
Absolutely.
had certain objectives that you wanted to accomplish for them, right? You're there
Mhm.
at their service. And so, what was it? I guess,
Yeah,
how would you describe how that came about? And,
that's right.
what would you say is what was your overarching mission in each one of those two churches?
Excellent. So this is a bit like I give some background. From the
Mhm.
moment I spoke to this brother from Kenya who was visiting, and he gave me an update. So it's a church that has not had like a staff person leading them full time, working for the church. They've not had that for the past 2 years. So basically, volunteer leaders who take turns, rotate in the leadership. And so there was a need for equipping, there was a
Mhm.
need for encouragement. Um, so my heart went out to them immediately. I had a conversation with the brother from Kenya, Samson Munda is his name. So Samson now set up a Zoom meeting when I came out from Kenya in January. That's when you and I met in person with Henry.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, I think the same week I came back, I had a Zoom call where the three couples who've been taking turns leading joined that Zoom call. There's a sister called Grace who spent most of her life in the U.S., but she's originally from Ethiopia, excuse me.
Mm.
She's back home now, doing some great work with Hope. She was part of that meeting. And so in that meeting, we connected, we talked about the needs. We kind of like drafted something about what the needs are. Um, we agreed that they were gonna actually send me a written note after that meeting, and I was also gonna share with them typical lessons I've taught in many of my trips, and trying to find a common ground. What are there things I've already taught that could meet some of their needs and things like that? So that was a process that we went through for a couple of weeks where we created a WhatsApp group and we're sharing back and forth. There was some back end work to do with my visa and logistics. Where will I stay? Blah blah blah. So all of those things were all part of that conversation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that interaction gave me a good feel. In fact, when I arrived on ground, like the Sunday lesson, I'd initially planned to teach a lesson from Ephesians 1 to 3, 1, 2, and
Uh,
3. Um, But the more I interacted with them, I felt like that can be done in another setting. And so I replaced that topic with another one. I thought from the seven churches in the book of Revelation.
Mm.
That's what I ended up doing on Sunday, which actually met their needs a lot more. And so the more I interact, the more I gain a sense. I pray, I listen in, and I get a sense of, okay, like the Ephesian class, it's something I can do remotely. It's something I've already recorded on in past sessions. I've already sent some of those recordings, so I can always come back and do that in a different way. But yeah, but it was that interaction, creating a WhatsApp group and interacting back and forth with them created a sense. So I was able to summarize to them the main kind of things I've taught. But at the end of the day, they just felt like, you know what, you decide, you know. But our interaction had been helpful enough for me to gain a sense of what the needs were. And
Mm.
to be honest with you, I said in one of the classes I did there that this is the beginning of an ongoing relationship. So I wasn't trying to achieve everything in just that 1 week, but it was a good start of a relationship that will grow over time. So
Mm.
that's kind of where this was in terms of Lubumbashi. I might have to recap a bit of my. I have a very emotional relationship with the church in Lubumbashi. This church, I started dreaming of this church in 2012 alongside a good friend of mine whose wife is from Lubumbashi. So they're both from Congo, DRC. They became disciples in South Africa, Cape Town, uh, came to Nigeria for work, and spent 3 years here, 2010 to 2013. And while they were here, they started dreaming of a church starting in Lubumbashi, which is his wife's hometown. It all turned out that his wife's niece came from Lubumbashi and stayed with them in Lagos, Nigeria, studied the Bible, became a disciple, joined the church, and became like a daughter to my wife and I because they left and she stayed on for like 2, 3 more years. We always have her over with us for Christmas because
Uh,
her family was not around and we'll just take her in. And she later on returned to Lubumbashi when the church had started. So I dreamt along with them, saw the church start without having visited, but I was very, very close to the plans for the church to start. I know the brother pretty well who leads the church there. I met him during my first trip to Congo in 2015, 10 years ago. Met him in Kinshasa. Great young man, Blanchard. And he's been leading the church for the past many years now. So I had that kind of connection with the church. And then it grew even more. So I've been to Congo. This is my fifth time to Congo. But each time I've gone
mm.
to the DRC, it was to Kinshasa, the capital city, and it's mainly for conferences. They have like what they call the SIDAC, which is an acronym in French, but in English, it's a conference for disciples in Central Africa.
Mhm.
So they've hosted that twice or three times. I've gone for each one of those. I've been there also to help start the School of Mission. So but this was the first time I was able to visit a church outside of the capital city. So it's been in the works. The last two times I met Blanchard, the leader of the church, I said, "Look, I got to find a way to come to Lubumbashi." Then I think the last thing that really pushed me to want to really go was I was in the U.S. The trip when we met at the conference in California. From California, I flew straight to Austin, spoke there on a Sunday. I spent a couple of days in Austin, and Austin supports this couple that leads the church in Lubumbashi. And
Uh-huh.
so they really put it on my heart that it would be really great if you can plan to include Lubumbashi in on one of your trips. So
Mhm.
apart from the personal motivations I already had prior to that, Austin kind of like added to that. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like what the build up.
Yeah.
And so, from a spiritual perspective, I had some great conversations with Blanchard, who leads the church prior to the visit. where in our interactions, we had some long, great phone calls. And even in the midst of those phone calls, he felt like a lot of his own needs were being met. And
Yeah.
it was a way of extending that to the rest of the church. Um, so my interactions with him really provide a lot of insight into the needs. Interestingly, even right there on ground, if you remember, you and I had a chat before I spoke at midweek there, and I was going to do a lot of more stuff on the Sermon on the Mount, but right there, while teaching and trying to make my teaching interactive and
Yeah.
asking people questions, and some of the questions were really slow in coming, and I felt like, wow, there is a need here. And so I found myself even just shifting right there in the midst of my lesson. And so it's a dynamic, ongoing process of constantly trying to sound out, find out what the needs are. And again, it's still, my mindset is still, this is like establishing a connection with the church that is ongoing. And so that's a bit of the background about those
Mm-hmm.
two churches and how the preparation came about.
Wow. Man, everything you said there to me sounds really great, and I hope that the people that are listening appreciate the fact that you're not just a walking encyclopedia. Right. I mean, you have to have your resources, right? You have to have your toolkit. You have to have your expertise. You have to be a master of your craft, right? Like Paul said, I'm a master builder. That's what he does, right? He knew the scriptures inside out. He knew the Jewish traditions. He knew what the law was all about. So he could walk into a synagogue and he would be the expert in the room. And from that knowledgeable vantage point, he would, as I love to hear it say, presenting cogent proofs that Jesus was the Christ. And I love that
Mm,
translation, cogent proofs that
mm,
Jesus was the Christ, inarguable facts that just elucidate the scriptures. And so that's what you bring in. That's your years of preparation and decades of study, but you have the flexibility to listen to the spirit and listen to the people and to pick out of your toolkit the tool, right? So it's like if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. But, a craftsman comes in and says, okay, what is the need here? What is the right tool for the job? And so to
what a
be able to
great
be
image.
flexible and just like, okay, I was thinking of Ephesians 1 and now that I'm hearing the questions and I'm seeing more the need that I wasn't aware of from a distance. Now I get right here in the same room with you, and I'm thinking maybe Revelation 3 is really the need of the hour. I mean, just to be able to have that flexibility and to think real time and to adapt and tailor your message to the need of the moment is great. I mean, that's fantastic. That's where you personally add value, right? You're not just bringing in your lecture notes from somewhere else and say, here's my notebook of notes that I did on this class, and I'm going to share them with you. You're sharing your own insights, and then also to the hours and hours and weeks, months, years of preparation and relationship building to actually get the connection. So you're not just like a traveling preacher, you actually have the connections, and then to leave, upon departure, know that this is not a one and done situation. Okay, I came, I did my job, I left. That it's an ongoing aspect of spiritual formation and maturity development in these places. And so you have the viewpoint to train up your Timothy, and find your connection partner, both with the leadership who can really champion and steer and empower the whole congregation, from top down, but also somebody on the ground with you who can be looking, listening, knowing, being your eyes and ears and knowing what it is that you would be looking for and follow up. And so that to me multiplies and extends your impact, 100-fold. And so, yeah, that's awesome, Gilbert. I
Thanks.
really appreciate
Just to
that.
keep in on that follow up, for example, I just started teaching spiritual disciplines to a group of disciples chosen across the churches in Central Africa. And so I did recommend that some disciples from Lubumbashi who were not on that list be added to that list. And they attended my class. The sister attended my class on Sunday. And 2 days later, I thought, oh, this other brother should have been there. And so I sent him the recording, and I'm advocating that he gets added to the group when I teach this coming Sunday. So, or Eliab and Ibrahim, whom we added to our teaching initiative group, the Brothers Beyond Borders that you're a part of. So they are from at this church. So that's all part of just trying to continue that ongoing relationship. Yeah. And maybe I should mention quickly, I probably didn't mention the background why DRC has been so much in the news, right?
Yeah, right.
So that what was really special about going to DRC was it was against all odds. Up till when I arrived in Addis Ababa, I wasn't still sure if I was going to be able to continue to DRC because Lubumbashi is one of the destinations of a rebel group that has been fighting in the eastern part, and their goal is to get to the capital of that mining region, which is Lubumbashi.
Yeah,
And that already taken over two big cities, and they were already making their way southwards towards
yeah,
Lubumbashi. So even in my interaction with the church there, the church leader, they had their ears on the ground. And shortly before I left for Addis Ababa, it sounded like this trip might not happen. So I even went an extra mile and requested for a multiple entry visa for DRC. So I got a 3-month multiple entry visa. And the idea is if I'm not able to continue there from Addis Ababa, I'll have to make a U-turn, come back home, but I'll still have 3 months to watch and look for the right time and window to still make it there. And so I decided that midway into my stay in Ethiopia, I will make a decision if I'm making a U-turn or I'm continuing to Lubumbashi. So they have a curfew every evening there. So at night, there's a curfew that starts. Everything closes down much earlier every day. And so even while I was there was a constant reminder that you're actually you're treading on some dangerous soil here. But hey, God has been faithful. I was able to spend a great week with the church. So that's been going on. The mining industry there is intense. I remember landing at the airport and waiting for over 30 minutes just to collect my luggage. But there were luggages coming out, and they were all in Mandarin, Chinese. They're pouring into that place. And so it's like everybody's still fighting to get their piece of that land and of the treasures there. I just thought I should mention that in passing.